From the Open Space Advisory Committee, Chairperson Welch, Vice Chair Inverson,
Here.
Member Martinovich,
Here.
Member Kimbrough, Member Galleri, Member Burge, Member Curry. A quorum is present. And then from the Parks and Recreation Commission, Chairperson Meyer.
Here.
Vice Chair Cartwright. Here. Commissioner Schutte.
Here.
Commissioner Whitefield. Commissioner Caldwell.
Here.
Commissioner Wilkie McCulloch.
Here.
Commissioner Kiever.
Here.
A quorum is present.
Thank you.
Before we go any further, can we check? Dave usually chimes in. I think that's what Jennifer's checking. Sorry? If we have anybody out there in space.
Oh.
Dave usually chimes in. Okay. Nobody else? Thanks, Jen. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Oh, I see. If any of the staff, any of the members called in. Okay. See, the public is invited at this time to comment on any comment and discuss any topic that is relevant to and within the authority of the Open Space Advisory Committee and or the Parks and Recreation Commission. Is there anyone from the public that would like to comment at this time?
Can we just verify that there's no one on the line calling in as well?
There are no callers on the line at this time.
Thank you. For possible action, approval of the minutes, the Open Space Advisory Committee. Is there any discussion regarding the Open Space Advisory Committee minutes? Yes.
I have a question, and it's more of a follow-up, if it's okay to ask. The ranking from the Nevada Land Trust on the item for the grant, has there been any movement in that grant?
For the record, Lindsay Boyer, Open Space Manager. I've been in continued discussions with Nevada Land Trust about kind of the progress, but as of right now, I don't have any updates specifically to share.
And then I have one more question for Ben.
Ben Johnson, Senior Deputy District Attorney for the record. As of today's date, there has been no appeal filed.
Any other comments? Okay. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
All those in favor? Aye. And I abstain because I was not present for that. I was busy in Europe. Kurt, do you want to handle the?
Well, sure.
The
So with the Parks and Rec Commission meeting minutes of August 17, 2021, does anybody see any corrections or concerns with the minutes as presented?
Motion to approve?
So I have a motion to approve. Do I have a second? Second. All those in favor of approving the minutes of August 17, 2021, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Okay. Madam Chair, back to you.
Thank you. All right, number 5, for possible action, discussion and possible action regarding a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors regarding a proposed draft dog rules and regulations policy for Carson City Parks, Recreation, and Open Space areas. All right, anybody have any discussion?
Madam Chair, I'll start us off with some background and going through some of the documents we have here, and then we can jump into discussion if that works for you.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, thank you.
So for the record, Lindsay Boyer, Open Space Manager. So, obviously this is a continuation of a long-term discussion that we've been having over about the last year. We have gotten to the point where we have kind of some overarching policy type statements that we've developed. And we brought those to the subcommittee that we have put together for this topic. So representatives of both OSAC and PRC came together to kind of discuss some of the outstanding questions that we had, and also verify that, we were all on the same page about some of these kind of policy statements that we were putting together. So attachment 2 in your packet kind of goes through some of these. And so I was just kind of going to go through one by one, and if there is anything that, the committee wants to discuss on each item or that feels like it needs to be added, then we can discuss those as we bring up each item. So the first kind of policy statement is that, dogs are required to be licensed, healthy, and up to date on all vaccinations. We feel like that's pretty straightforward. The second item that we've come to the conclusion on is that we are looking to have dogs be required to be on leash at all times, except in designated areas, which we'll outline below. And that includes parks. So dogs would be required to be on leash in all parks. The third item, dogs are prohibited at certain parks, buildings, or facilities. So we have a few parks and recreation buildings noted here, as well as some special use facilities and sports complex. Does anyone feel like there's any buildings or facilities or anything here that might be missing? All right. And then item number 4, certain areas are designated for off-leash use. We want to put in a note in the policy that even in these off-leash areas, that dogs are required to be under voice control, and also the owner must be carrying a leash with them at all times, just in case something were to arise and they need to put the dog on the leash. So the following areas that we've identified as dog-friendly and are designated for off-leash use are fenced dog parks like Sonoma and Fuji. The subcommittee also talked about areas where more dog parks might be needed geographically, so that was a discussion topic for the future. Open space, we're saying is a designated off-leash area, and that also includes trails. And I know there'd been some discussions in the past about different trail surface types, and if, that should be a consideration in terms of leash rules. But as of right now, we've kind of just lumped all trails together. Any discussion or anything on that item before we move on? Yep.
Lindsay? Okay, sorry, Lisa Schutte for the record. I actually have a discussion or comment for the first part on 2, where it says dogs are required to be on leash at all times. I think that the statement in 2 different sentences is a little confusing. And so perhaps dogs are required to be on leash at all times, including while in parks, except in designated areas. Just a suggestion.
Great. Yeah, excellent suggestion. We've made a note of that. Thank you.
How are we doing? Okay, so I'm going to try something here. The under voice control, I actually was talking to somebody from Boulder, Colorado today, and they actually have to certify to be allowed to take their dog out without a leash and trained that they can be put under control and that they're given a card. And I'm not advocating for that. I'm just telling you, a community built around trails like Boulder is, like this community is, has that as a rule. So what I would ask that might look at in the wording for this is that if they can't put it underneath voice control, that they need to leash it when they're around other parties on the trails or an open space. some way so it's advisory without making it that they have to go get a card from somebody to say that they're certified, but it just shows that there's that kind of attention paid. And then when I read all of the comments, and I spent a lot of time selecting and putting them in categories, and the number one complaint are people without their dogs on a leash approaching people with dogs on a leash, or people that are walking without any dogs. So with the idea that the big comment was that people say their dogs are all friendly and that they're under control, and they aren't most of the time, a high percentage if you look at the comments. So it would be nice if it was advisory that if they're approaching people on the trail, or within certain, if they see a family coming up the trail and they got dogs, that they need to physically put them under control if they can't voice control. If that's possible to get that by you guys today, I don't know. And then my other comment was, I'd like to see a restriction. When I was up riding my bike today, the guy's got 5 dogs, not on a leash, and they're running crazy. You essentially have to quit doing what you're doing and stop, and then hope that none of them want a piece of you while they're going by you. So I wonder if we could limit the number of dogs and feel comfortable with a reasonable number, like 3 dogs or something that people are out with, rather than out with 5 or 6 months running without a leash on. So a comment to see if we could. This is a large group, so I don't know how well this might be received, but I would propose that to this group for some simple wording, advisory on the compliance of leash them if they can't put them under voice control, which is pretty obvious to most people, and then to limit the number if possible. And that's it.
Thank you, Jennifer Budge, Parks and Recreation Director. We had some technical difficulties, but I just wanted to note that Commissioner Whitefield is on the line and attending virtually.
Any other?
If we need to build on what this, Susan Martinovich, I would support what Mark is saying, because I've run into that as well. Just people, because I live adjacent to a trail, and the dogs are running around, and people they're calling them, but they're still in my yard. So that's kind of agitating. And also agree with the limit. I read the I wasn't at the meeting in August, but I read through the minutes, and there was quite a bit of discussion on the pavement and the surface and the width. Before I read those, my concern kind of keep an eye on is the types of trails that dogs.
This is Commissioner Cartwright for the record. At the August 17th meeting, my one proposed input, I guess, was to make sure that people knew that dogs weren't allowed on playground equipment. And I didn't see it in there, so I didn't know if that was something we decided we didn't need in there, or and I have one other thing, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Madam Chair. For the limit issue, I think there's already a code in Carson that limits the number of dogs you're allowed, so maybe we can just punt that over there. I'm trying to do a quick Google, but it's Carson City Municipal Code is not my strong suit, so maybe some legal person would know. But those are my 2 comments. Thanks.
We can definitely check on the municipal code item. With regard to playgrounds, if you look at number 2, if dogs must be on a leash in every park, then that would resolve any issues with the playground situation. At least you wouldn't have an off-leash area conflicting with that. If we added playgrounds or took them away, some are fenced, some are not, it became a little complicated for us to be able to have like a rule or a guideline just related to playgrounds. So the subcommittee felt that making it simple across the board related to parks specifically would be easier also for the park rangers to enforce, so we didn't have different rules in different areas.
Question. When we're limiting the number of dogs on the trails, is that going to be per person or per group? Because if we have a group of 3 or 4 and they each have 3 dogs, we've got a herd then. And so would it just be per group or per person?
Well, if you have a family, you have the father, the mother, the daughter, the son, and 4 dogs. I mean, I know, but each, so that's when you get law enforcement. Who do you write the ticket to? So we got 4 people and the dogs that aren't behaving. But I never looked or thought of the factor when you got this large group of people out with dogs. And I don't think that occurs very often, but maybe it does more than I'm aware of, where a whole family and 3 other friends go out with all their dogs. And I don't know. That's a tough one, but I would hope that they only have 1 dog each. So that's only like 3 dogs for 3 families. So most people don't have 3 dogs each, and they're out with all a bunch of big group. So that's the kind of questions that get thrown when you try to make a figure that works for everybody. Then something like that happens. So I don't know how to speak to that. Maybe somebody else has a comment to that.
I believe that a family can own 3 dogs within the CCMC. And so if I was walking 3 dogs with a friend who also had 3 dogs, I think that it's reasonable. You have like 1 person per 3 dogs, have it something like that. And, I can speak to a lot of the responsible folks. We walk with our leashes, or we run with our leashes, and when we see other animals, when we have a goofball, we tend to put it on leash. And I understand that some people don't, which is why we're having this conversation. But, I think it's really important that trails, in addition to being made available for walkers and hikers and runners and bicyclists, that we also make them available to people and to walk their dogs, because that is an important and enjoyable passive recreation for many.
I found the municipal code. It's 7.13.050, subsection 1. No person shall keep more than 3 dogs. So does that perhaps help? Although it doesn't help with our issue. If all 13 of us are going for a run and we're all taking all 3 of our dogs, we've got a stampede.
Well, I'd take odds on that, and how often that would happen in Carson City. But actually, that's a really good camera moment just to capture that. But that would be crazy. So no, that's good that you already have a municipal code that helps support this. That's fine. That works out perfect, actually. So yeah, that makes sense.
I do have to say, I wonder how often that is enforced.
I have a question.
Kurt Meyer. When we were talking about single track trails and so forth, I was unclear if you were talking about the fact that the dogs should be on a leash because it's crowded with the bikers and hikers and all that on the single track, or not on a leash. I was unclear.
I would recommend that they are on a leash if it is a single track and there isn't the room, because then the dog can be restrained or moved off, or as you see the bikers coming.
Well, I guess I would be in opposition to that, in that most single track trails are further away from any double track trails and further away from the community and all that kind of stuff. And that's where we're out there running with our dogs off leash. So that's what I see. And I think we had some comment on this in August and so forth when I looked at the minutes, and a lot of people agreed to that, possibly having those dogs on a trailhead on a leash, which I think it was 200 to 300 feet. And then after that, go ahead and let them off. Because speaking from personal experience, the dog 99.9% of the time does not use the single track as much as he or she is out and about and the person's using the single track. Just my comment, so thank you.
have a question. I have a question.
Dave, go ahead.
Oh, okay. The audio is in and out, sorry. I was trying to read some of the municipal code on dogs in parks, and I'm trying to figure out how the code blends in with the policy we're looking at. And unless I misread it, I thought it said that dogs are not allowed in any park unless specifically authorized, or did I misread that?
Yeah, we're looking at rewriting or clarifying the codes at this point. I'm not correct.
Yeah, that was the section I was looking at, was the next topic, but the way it reads right now, it says there's dogs, at least I thought I read that dogs are just not allowed unless they, specifically stated they could be, which seems to kind of be backwards from what the policy is.
Sure. Jennifer Budge, Parks and Recreation Director. And Commissioner Whitefield is correct. Several years ago, I would say probably 8 or so years ago, the city instituted the current practice that we have where there's some parks are dogs off leash, some parks dogs are allowed, some parks dogs are not. And we have very inconsistent rules within our park system right now. Some are signed appropriately, some are not. What I think was intended to be a trial ended up being the practice. They weren't authorizations through the Board of Supervisors, which they would have to designate those areas. So that's the practice we're doing today, is what consistent policies do we want? We can, hopefully after tonight, you can give us enough direction where we can go back and draft a policy that would eventually go to the Board of Supervisors for approval and then feed into our ordinance update. So it's all kind of dovetails into each other, but it's checking in with our user groups, all of you, what policies and direction do we want to go forward? You've heard from staff that our current practices are inconsistent, and it's difficult, especially for our park rangers, to enforce. So we're just trying to circle back and check in with that, and if that wording that's in the current code is working for the direction we want to go into, then that's what we could go forward with.
Madam Chair, Ben Johnson, Deputy District Attorney for the record. Commissioner Whitefield, can you give me the citation that you're looking at, and I'll take a look at it and see if I can provide some clarification while the rest of the discussion continues.
Yeah, I'll jump over to that and try to send that.
I have a question. Hello, this is Christine Curry. With respect to that, I don't think it was being what parks are dog-friendly off-leash and which ones aren't. Because I take my dog to off-leash parks a lot, I was looking to see that that was on the list. And then it occurred to me that we need some clarification. I mean, there are some parks, as you said, that are signed dogs off-leash, okay, but under control of owners. But they're not listed here. So that's the first thing I was looking for, was a list of that. There is a long list of, where we need to get additional waste stations and things like that, but it doesn't say very clearly there. There is a section that says, if remaining no dog parks were converted to allow dogs, Blackwell Pond is showing there as one of them, that is currently no dog, I guess, but converted to allow. I'm confused by that.
So the document that you have here
Yeah.
is what we're proposing. We're not going over what we're currently doing. So we're actually proposing that all parks within the park system would be dogs on leash.
Ah,
So if a park like Blackwell's Pond you're talking about right now, let's
What-
say there's a park that right now doesn't allow dogs at all or dogs on leash,
uh-huh.
they would be allowed to have dogs but on a leash. So that way we'd have one consistent rule, except for designated areas. So we realize if we can get to the second page, it might clarify for you. But we would we recognize that we need more designated areas for off-leash use if we do that.
Okay. Well, I'm just concerned that areas that are currently off-leash, that are parks, not trails, but that are parks and off-leash and not fenced in, the people who use those parks are very accustomed to that, and they know each other and their dogs and everything, and if that were to be reversed and made to be leash only,
Mm-hmm.
I think that we should probably be careful not to do that.
Okay. And we talked about that at the subcommittee meeting as well. And I think let's get into where we're proposing maybe some additional off-leash areas to try to address that concern. But right now, that's a portion of the problem. And I really understand where you're coming from. But a portion of some parks are off-leash, and then you have to go past a sign and you can let your dog off leash. It's just very confusing for a lot of people, and it does create additional conflicts. So we want to try to resolve those if we can through consistent rules. But we'll keep going on this document, and then maybe that will help answer some of those questions.
Chairman Meyer?
Yes.
I have that citation.
Okay. Are you ready, Ben?
It's,
Ben Johnson, Deputy District Attorney for the record. Actually, it was pointed out to me while discussion was going on. So you're correct that CCMC 13.02.090 does currently prohibit dogs in parks unless they're service animals or it's part of a dog training class. So essentially what this policy would be to, amend that and clarify it so that, there are defined areas where dogs are and are not allowed, including open space, because currently the code does not contemplate open space areas. So essentially this would be, updating that section. And if that didn't answer your question, please let me know, Commissioner Whitefield.
okay, there's also another section that may apply. 02090 was the first one I found, but 02120 addresses animals generally. And it basically says you can't let loose any animal or fowl of any kind in any park except in areas designated for such use. So, I mean, it's kind of duplicated there in terms of dogs.
And that's part of the reason that the district attorney's office is currently undergoing an extensive code rewrite. There are, many redundancies, and thank you for pointing this one out. Obviously this one does apply to animals other than dogs. So it probably contemplates that, what I don't know.
Thank you.
Thank you for letting me ask another question. So I know this is another agenda item, but with the municipal code rewrite, would that be an issue if we try and come up with a definition of trailhead and then the district attorney general's office also comes up with one? Is there a possibility those could conflict?
We would work with the DA's office on definitions, and even if it was a policy level that went to the board, they would have to approve it anyway. So we would make sure that they would, dovetail with each other.
I have a question. So what we're talking about is we're going to allow all parks to have dogs if they're on leashes. Is that correct? Is that?
That's that's what we're proposing, and the subcommittee is proposing as well.
Okay, what about that park up off Winnie Carriage Square? I thought those residents were adamant that they didn't want dogs at all in the park.
They were.
Would we just ignore those feelings, or would we work with them?
Well, we absolutely don't want to ignore anyone's comments or feelings. We do get calls on a regular basis about dogs there. The park rangers try to respond if they can. Oftentimes, by the time they show up, the person's already left or the issue's already resolved or whatever. It's already occurring. We recognize how they feel, but it's difficult to have one or two parks where these things, there's different rules, and it's just harder for the park rangers in general to enforce. We would like one consistent rule and message across the park system but to be able to provide more off-leash areas for those owners. You know, there's going to be a few areas where dogs are prohibited, like sports complexes and those parks in those areas, but it's a little bit more common practice at those types of areas. I recognize that we're going to have to, based on your direction tonight, we'll have to go and meet with homeowners and do some due diligence before we even have a final draft for you to review. But we're proposing dogs on leash in all parks. And that's what the subcommittee felt as well. So I don't want to speak for the subcommittee, but we really struggled over this. But the bigger issue we felt was for consistent rules and regulations throughout the entire system. I mean, I think we talked a half an hour just about Mills Park. I mean, it's a whole issue in itself.
So this language would make it easier for enforcement, and it might also make it easier for education.
Yes.
For the residents.
And that's really our goal. We're not out to cite people. I mean, we always choose education over enforcement wherever possible. But it's hard to say, oh, you can go to this park, but not that park. And it's just right now, it's frankly so confusing for staff and the residents that we have to do something about it.
Let me help Jen here. I was on the subcommittee, and I've got 40 years' experience in parks and all over the state, northern Nevada, but the theme was, last time I heard at the big meeting, was keep it simple. And to keep it simple, you're gonna make some people that aren't gonna be happy with your decision. So I promise Jen will stand right behind her as a subcommittee to support her, because when you take this to the public, dogs is a very sensitive issue with people, just like I said, it's almost a mask issue for some people. That we need to be there to support them, but make it simple and make it all the way across the board so that one neighborhood isn't special more than another neighborhood is special. And it's hard to do that, and you're gonna make some people angry, and they're gonna come to the meeting and speak to it. I was on the planning commission for years, and used to be some exciting meetings over details like that. But that's a part of the due process that we're doing as an agency and a board to support. But I want to say the subcommittee that met was behind Jen's decisions in these writings, and that I said I'd stand behind her in any public forum to support that. We're not gonna make everybody happy, but this is the best way to solve this leash problem with dogs. And we did our homework, we did a survey, they've done all this work, they've had public comments, and it's all in place to make those arrangements and maybe make a few people upset. So I'm chiming in to support her for that. And that's why there's certain rules that just, with dogs, that you can't make everybody happy. It's that simple. Thank you.
Well, don't they say, you know, you've done a good job if you've irked somebody at least?
Kurt Meyer. We talked about this quite a bit last August, and that was the Waterfall Trail and the sensitivity to the water supply and so forth. I didn't see that in this attachment. Did you guys talk about that in your subcommittee meeting? And if so, what did you guys talk about, and how did you come to a conclusion?
Lindsay Boyer, Open Space Manager, for the record. So, yeah, we did talk about that, and that kind of, I guess, bleeds us into item number 5 on the second page here. It isn't spelled out specifically, so we need to add that. So thank you for bringing that up. But that would basically fall under item number 5 here, in that some areas, dogs may either be full-on prohibited or may be required to be on leash permanently or for part of the season based on environmental sensitivity, or if there's, historic or culturally significant items there. That environmental sensitivity could include nesting habitat, wetlands, riparian areas, portions of the river. So we talked a lot about this at the subcommittee meeting, and really how to handle it and how to be consistent, especially in the river corridor. The whole goal of this task is to create consistency while also protecting the resource, and how do you strike that balance. And so we wanted to include things in the policy where we would have that sort of management level ability to make decisions about certain trails or certain areas. So maybe we designate the whole river as off leash, but we start to see problems in certain areas, we need to be able to respond to that. So I think this item number 5 kind of speaks to that. If we need to start implementing seasonal closures or seasonal leash requirements and things like that. Also with the sheep grazing that we have in the spring, that's a time where we, would prefer to prohibit dogs altogether if we can, but absolutely they need to be on leash. And then, looking into our wetlands and detention basins are another topic that we're sort of looking into. So one discussion topic here related to item number 5 that we may want to all discuss together is, we've talked about trailheads and requiring dogs be on leash at trailhead facilities. And then, you can take the leash off after a certain distance. I think we landed on at least 100 yards, but that certain trails that might be insufficient, we might want a longer distance. And so we wanted to strike at least a minimum. And then I think we should probably all discuss how trailheads should be defined. I think that's a topic you brought up specifically, like trailheads versus access points and how we want that to be represented in the policy. And then while I'm still talking, and then we can get on to discussing everything on this page, but as we've been talking about, if we start implementing these policies, we're going to need to identify more areas where dogs can be off leash. And so the latter half of this page talks about areas where potentially more off-leash areas could be added, making sure we have good coverage throughout the city. We're also looking, as I mentioned, into the detention basin parks, and if there's any concerns there with having dogs. Tributaries to the Carson River, so Ash to Kings Creek, going back to the Waterfall Trail and water quality. And then we are looking into things about dog licensing, and if there's an opportunity to maybe add, a $1 increase to that license that, could help offset some of the costs for increased maintenance and education and compliance and everything that's going to go along with this, because attachment 1 in your packet goes through some of the fiscal impacts that would be associated with making some of these changes. And then obviously we recognize we're going to need to be doing a lot of education when we roll this out, and, the need to tap into some volunteer help, which we are looking to bring on a volunteer coordinator to assist within the whole department. This would be one of the things that they would be taking on is potentially, a mutt-mitt program, which we already have kind of a program started. So yeah, I guess with that, maybe we can take some discussion specifically related to item number 5.
Continuation of my comment. So what we're looking at is within this discussion is still possibly limiting in those areas where the water comes to our drinking water, like that wonderful letter that Lynn Zong sent us and an additional information in the August meeting about how that could affect the drinking water quality and so forth. And I think we were all on the same page about the restriction of dogs on that Waterfall Trail because of those concerns. Did we research those concerns? Are those concerns that are valid, or are those concerns that might not necessarily be valid? And I guess what I'm saying, that would be an exception to dogs on a leash anywhere, because dogs on a leash still pee, that kind of thing. So that was my direct question, and I'm sorry if I didn't formulate that the correct way.
So related to the Waterfall Trail, we have had plenty of discussions with the water quality folks here, and they adamantly agree that dogs need to be prohibited at that location. For those of you who don't know, the intake for where they take the water out is directly below the waterfall. So that's a really short distance, for anything to be contaminating the water. So I think, those concerns that have been brought up related to the Waterfall Trail specifically are founded. And based on that, we're agreeing that we should move forward with prohibition at that location. Dogs would be allowed to, go up Kings Canyon Road, the other trails in that area, but the Waterfall Trail specifically, that short, quarter mile or whatever it is, it would be prohibited. Yeah, sorry if I wasn't getting it.
I could have worded it.
On top of that, I'd like to ask another question. So but they would be okay at the higher elevation above the waterfall, because the trail does go up and over in the same creek above the waterfall.
I think that's a really good point, because, originally we were saying that, yeah, you can go up North Kings Canyon Road or, some of the other trails, but I think, if it's crossing that drainage, then we need to look at that trail segment as well. So we'll do some more research there.
Add to that real quick. So I think that if you're going to try to chase that down in any sort of aspect to be able to control where they're going to access it, you can only do that at the trailhead, because there is a million different ways to access that creek from above, coming from different trails. And so I think just specifically outlining it in number 3 of attachment 2, you have your parks and recreation, your special use facilities, and then add a third item, trails or open space, and list it there. And you can maybe even put a reason why, but I don't know if we're going to be able to separate out above the actual waterfall trail versus everywhere else they're going to be on the west side of town, because you could access it from quite a few different trailheads.
So just to clarify, your recommendation would be that essentially the Kings Canyon trailhead would be a facility we would just identify no dogs, period, because of the access points from that location?
No, I'd just say the actual waterfall trail, the actual designated waterfall trail. Because you could go up Kings Canyon, go multiple different directions. You get to go into towards Highway 50, right? And you can do different areas from there. So if you're blocking it at that specific trailhead, you're going to be blocking a lot of other open space areas.
Unless you, with your expertise, feel there are other areas that need to be blocked or denied. Because that's what I read 5 is giving you that ability to prohibit.
Like, for example, when we opened the Buzzy's Ranch Trail, we made the decision that dogs should be on leash at that location because of the ranching facility, as well as it was a new trail going through, migratory bird habitat. And so we wanted to add that extra protection. And so number 5 basically gives us that discretion as needed.
Well, and what I was saying about the waterfall trail, so you go to the waterfall, but then from the waterfall, when you're on, I don't know what the new trail is going to look like with the parking lot and everything, but when you go to the waterfall, then you turn off from that trail to go up above the waterfall. That sign could also say, no dogs this trail. I know that there are other ways to get to that creek, but at least that one, if water quality, the water quality board says, no, we don't want dogs up there either, it may be okay. That little bit further up may be all right. Just if they say it's not, then we should mark that trail also, that one little trail. But any other comments? Yes.
Mary Burge, for the record. I think it's off anything up higher, and unless we find down the road that the water quality starts to change. But it'll be a good step to block off that lower trail and see what happens after that with the water quality. Going on to this, how should trailheads be defined? I myself am a little confused about what we actually consider to be official trailheads. As I know a lot of people in town are like, let's go to Pooh Corner, which is Foothill Drive. but there's no actual signage there. Or now people are parking at Longview and Kings all over the place, but there's no actual signage there, but it's obviously a trailhead. So how, I mean, do we need to put signs, specific signs that would designate that as a specific trailhead? That's because I'm, like I said myself, I don't really understand what an official trailhead is in this town either. But I go to them all.
Susan Martinovich, maybe as a recommendation, because I heard the word before, access to trails, so it could be trailheads or access. And then we don't have to worry about signing it or defining it right now, but that gives you a place to go with this policy.
Yeah, I agree. I think adding access points just really closes the loop on any confusion.
Are going up on those places soon.
Oh.
So, right, Greg?
Let me chime in just to say that, make sure that somehow we need to delineate, a lot of the access points are private property. A lot of times they're in properties that you don't really own, they're just nobody's bothered to develop or whatever. So you just need to be clear about where those are maybe, and they were in the, I thought they were in the trail plan. Numbered and stuff, so then you have a list. So if you're asked that, these places are this, but hopefully we avoided the private property issue ones where you shouldn't be saying there's any access at all.
Is there any discussion on the proposed dog parks?
I support, the first two in terms of John Mankins Park. And we spoke a lot about this at the subcommittee. That and Ronald D. Wilson, the infrastructure is there. It's an easier, more natural process. And then from there, we can look toward other dog parks and off-leash areas. But I think one of these, or potentially both, would be a great place to start.
I think before, maybe, to me, there's like two things happening right now. One is the policy that we just talked about, the 1 through 5. And are you looking to add these others that you're doing the other ones to that as part of that policy tonight? And I guess if you are, I would have a little bit of concern because you have costs outlined and associated with it. And so I'd kind of like to see how do these costs fit in with the budget, and maybe come back with a recommendation that we should add these, and this is the impact to the budget, or these are the costs associated, or how will they be integrated in the process? Because even and I really personally I liked adding $1 and to help offset the cost. That could be part of a recommendation going forward to add this. How does it fit within the budget, and then moving forward?
Thank you. Jennifer Budge, Parks and Recreation Director. I completely agree with what you're saying, and that's something we want to do moving forward. We have kind of two paths going. We recognize that some of these policy statements are going to impact existing off-leash users. And to try to mitigate that, we wanted to have sort of a parallel path about where else can we provide these areas to help, and what is the easiest way for us to implement that. What facilities have infrastructure that might be affordable for us to just add some fencing and some signage, and then we have a new off-leash area. What would be the path of least resistance for that? So just as staff, we tried to look at some just general areas where we saw opportunities for potential off-leash areas. It won't be part of the policy, but we recognize that we are going to impact those off-leash users that are in more urban parks. And we want to provide something that's ADA accessible and urban in that similar setting in an off-leash area. Not everybody wants to be out in rural open space and running their dogs. Not everybody is physically able to do that. So we need to provide places where there's parking, there's ADA access, and these are locations where we could potentially do that. So that would help mitigate like Long Ranch Park, or, you know, maybe we look at Long Ranch Park or, you know, some other locations, but these are just some areas we identified that could be potential. So it would be sort of a parallel path. But recognizing that those policy statements would probably impact some of those urban users.
And Susan Martinovich, totally support that. Just that that's kind of what I was seeing, is that we have the policy now and that we want to go forward, but I guess I personally would want more information, but before we just say, let's do the Mankins Park, you know, what is involved in it and what is the cost of it? And I know you have it here, it's just that it's all kind of lump sum, and I guess in general, what does it fit within the overall budget?
Sure. So in the beginning of the next year, calendar year, we'll start to talk about the budget.
Right.
But that's why we're sort of teeing this up, if you will. So if we want to include some of those things in the budget that you recommend to the Board of Supervisors, that would be a great way to do it. And we can get a cost for that. So if we need so many lineal feet of fence and we need, you know, so much money for signage and a couple, you know, dog waste disposal containers or whatever, we can calculate that out. But before we do that, we just wanted to, in general, see what you thought about these locations and if there's certain ones that you think make more sense than others because we're deficient in that geographic area, or you think it's more accessible, or just your general opinion, so we can kind of start to look at that. Because to do a cost analysis on all of it might not make sense.
Yeah, I am still sort of stuck on the statement that all parks are going to be leashed parks. How many parks do we have now that are dog-friendly and off-leash? I've been looking for that in this, and I couldn't find it. And I quite simply, there's a lot of parks here, and I just don't know a source to be able to find that myself. And then if all of those are now going to be leashed parks and where they're located, urban versus rural, et cetera, what are these parks right here look kind of sort of far out from the core areas of neighborhoods where there are off-leash parks now, and there won't be later. So that means people are going to have to get into a car to go let their dog run off lead. And places that are sort of on the urban edges for people who have small dogs are not an appropriate place for small dogs to run off lead because they can become a meal for a coyote. And there's a lot of people that use small dogs, have dogs off lead that are small in much more urban pocket parks. And these that are here in the list don't strike me as easily accessible as the few off-lead parks that I know of. Thanks.
There is a list of all the dog parks, well, the parks that are where dogs are allowed off leash, and that includes Blackwell's Pond, Fuji, Fullstone, Greenbelt, Hidden Park, Meadows Park. I've never heard of that one. Lakeview Park, Lone Mountain Park, Long Ranch Park, Mares Park, Monte Vista Park, Ronald Wilson, Riverview, Sonoma, Steinheimer, and Treadway. Those are the parks where dogs are allowed off leash in Carson. And it's a great site on carson.org, and there's even a little video on dog park etiquette. So, you know, I think the Parks Department is doing a wonderful job of providing education for the people in Carson about where dogs are allowed and how they're supposed to behave. No, it says, dog friendly, Carson City dog friendly park. Dogs are allowed off leash at these parks.
Am I right, Dave? I believe you.
Okay.
think there were that many.
No, I think, I mean, Sonoma and Fuji are the only ones that
So,
Can I ask a quick question, clarifying? Did we, in this policy, did we make any current off-leash areas into leashed areas? I thought we just carried through. Okay.
Yeah, so we only have Fuji and Sonoma are the two formal dog parks. The Lampa development on the east side has a 3-acre dog park that's planned, and it's in the conditions of approval for that development. So we'll have a future dog park built by the developer, and they'll fund the maintenance of that park as well in that subdivision. It'll be right across the street on Airport Road from the current Humane Society location, so they'll be able to go across the street, exercise those dogs, because the current area that they have is really not sufficient either. So it'll benefit them and the public. There'll be adequate parking. People will be able to drive, park, be ADA accessible. And then we looked at these locations based on that information. What geographic areas are we missing based on those 3 locations? So Fuji, Sonoma, and Lampa. Where else do we need a designated fenced area? So that's how we kind of came up with that list, is where else do we have? We recognize that the north end of town, which in the survey we heard that they wanted an area north end of town. So that's why we were looking at Ronald D. Wilson, for example, to help meet that need.
Lindsay Boyer for the record. I think one thing to point out or clarify too is, some of those areas that we just noted that are on the website that are, currently allowing dogs to be off leash, a lot of those would fall under the trail category in terms of dogs being allowed to be off leash. So like Lone Mountain, for example, has a trail going through it. Lakeview Park, really shouldn't be called a park because it's actually an open space, but that's got a trail going through it. So I think that would sort of kick in. And what we're talking about in terms of dogs being on leash in parks are traditional parks. Yeah.
anything else?
Yes, if I can just add something here. Let's see, for the record, I see Dave Navarro, Parks Operations Superintendent. forgot where I was for a second there. I just wanted to, Commissioner Cartwright, just to let you know, currently there's only 3 parks that we have that we do not allow dogs at all, and all the other ones are kind of like hybrid of some sort, and those are John Mankins Park, Carriage Square, and Mills Park. Those are the only ones that currently that we do not allow dogs at, and all the other ones are some sort of like hybrid, either on leash, off leash, or. You're welcome.
Okay, this reads a little confusing. This it says for possible action, but no proposed motion. So, what are you looking for from us, other than just
So what
comments?
you might consider is, I think we still need to do some work. We've taken some more notes, is to direct staff to draft a policy for future consideration in your review, maybe at the February meeting.
That's what I was thinking more than anything else. I don't think we're ready to send something to the Board of Supervisors yet.
No, but if the bones of this is working for everybody, and based on your comments, we could start drafting an actual policy for you to consider.
I would recommend that with the one change that Commissioner Schutte, Supervisor Schutte mentioned, that's just that sentence on number 2 be just real clear. They're all required to be on a lease in all parks except, because that's what this one's about, I think.
Okay. All right, we're ready to move on to the. Oh, okay.
And actually, it was really more of a comment. Thank you for the work that you've put into this, because I know it's a whole lot of work. And, again, for the record, that this process has been an effort to really simplify the policy and to also deal with the reality. And people are bringing dogs to parks. People are bringing dogs to Mills Park, obviously to Carriage Square. So there are some concerns in the fact that the city is getting called because of dogs in parks leads to how do we manage that? And so I really think that having leash laws in all of the parks will really help normalize having leashes, and so it's just easier to kind of keep tabs of. And then when we're providing options for those folks who really want to allow their dogs off leash, whether it's Sonoma, whether it's Fuji, and then making other options available, will help make the transition much smoother. So I think we're moving in the right direction. And so thank you for the work you've been doing.
I
Comment,
just wanted
please.
to thank the subcommittee. They've been really supportive and helpful, and we'll probably get you guys together with a rough draft of the policy as we move forward before we come back.
Well, thank you.
Comment?
David? Yes.
Yes, I would just like to echo Commissioner Schuette's comments. Considering the complexity of this issue and the discussion that we had at the previous meeting about it and all of the public comment, I think the subcommittee did an excellent job of boiling it down into something simple and understandable. And the staff did a great job of putting this proposal together. So thank all of you that participated in that for your work. I think you did a great job. And I think out of this, we may be able to get somewhere in the near future. So thank you.
Okay, let's see. For discussion and overview of existing Carson City Municipal Code, Title 13, and possible future revisions needed. This was the code that.
Did we do a motion on the last discussion? No,
Oh,
we
did
didn't do
we
anything.
need one?
We took no action. I would make that motion if somebody understood what was said before. Not understood, but if somebody would clarify that in a simple sentence, I'd make that motion that we direct staff to come back with a draft regulation proposal for dogs in Carson City. Would that work?
Yeah.
Madam Chair, Ben Johnson, Senior Deputy District Attorney for the record. Because of the way that it was agendized, it was for a recommendation to the board. So you don't necessarily, you don't have to make a motion to direct staff.
Sure.
You know, the comments that you've gave will be used by staff in coordination with the district attorney's office to further the policy and bring something back again for further consideration. And then at that time, you can make a recommendation to the board.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we're moving on to the municipal code that Dave mentioned before. Jennifer, is this you? Oh. Hi, John.
Thank you. John Costello, Senior Park Ranger for the record. I think this is a good segue from what we just finished discussing with the municipal codes. Obviously, I think everybody brought up some really good points and some, I guess you could call them discrepancies within the municipal codes with Chapter 13 with the dog issue. So I'm not going to go through every single code and definition. I'm sure you guys are familiar with the codes enough, but there are a few that I have on my list, and Jen told me to do a few bullet points, but I have a little more than a few bullet points, so I'm going to try to be brief. But in Chapter 13, we have received, as the park rangers, we've received a legal opinion from the DA's office that we do have the ability to issue citations if necessary with Chapter 13. That's the only municipal code that we have been, I suppose you could consider it permission to cite in those instances. Obviously, as Jen has mentioned also, education is always going to be primary over enforcement. So some of the ones that, you could say that are outdated, within these municipal codes. I know compliance required 1302-050 on here. I think compliance required, we do have these specific codes, but I think compliance could kind of be a catch-all, and then we could ultimately move into identifying specifics that we deal with every day within our parks and our open spaces to ultimately update these codes. For instance, another one is amplified sound. Obviously, we deal with this at some of our pavilions within our parks. It does say amplified sound exceeding 25 watts. For instance, we use decibels when we're dealing with dirt bikes. I don't know if I can't tell you guys what 25 watts is. So another one you guys brought up earlier, one code states that you can't have dogs in any parks, and then the Animals Code 1302-120 says no person shall hitch, fasten, lead, drive, or let loose. So that, to me, states that you can not only let loose a dog, but you also can't have them on a leash. So I think going forward, if we were to, like I said, not only add some codes, but also update the verbiage, because these municipal codes aren't only for the park rangers or you all and our staff. It's also for the public, so they can be able to identify which codes are for our parks and our open space areas. And we want this verbiage to make sense to the public as well. Bicycles and animals, no person shall operate, drive, or ride upon any bicycle, cycle, horse, or any other animal in any park except in areas designated for such use. By that verbiage, you technically can't ride your bicycle in Mills Park. And obviously that's not something that we want to enforce as well. Litter 1302-130, as park rangers, unfortunately, we come across dump sites quite often. I think illegal dumping in 1302, because there is an illegal dumping code for the city. However, it's not something that ultimately, as I mentioned earlier, the rangers have received legal opinion on that we can only cite with code 13. If we could have an illegal dumping code in 13, that would really help us out a lot, because we put a lot of time and resources sometimes into investigating these dump sites, whether it be in an open space or a parks area, because we have specific signage in some of our parks where we have that specifically states no dumping, because we get a lot of our areas that have a lot of household trash in it. And then camping 1302-190, as you all are aware of, we have a transient population in some of our parks within Carson City. Not always do they stay overnight. I think NRS does have a camping definition. I think defining camping would really benefit us in our 13 codes. Activities limited: model airplane flying, golf, archery, baseball, softball, football, soccer, volleyball, or any similar game of a possible hazardous nature. Possible hazardous nature leaves a lot, open for interpretation. I think drone usage would definitely be one that we would want to put in there. And then there's obviously some other ones as well. But some of my other bullet points, and then I'll kind of open it for if you guys have any questions for me. I just think one of the biggest things from the ranger standpoint is we just want to make sure that these 13 codes are inclusive, not only for parks, but open spaces as well. And where our jurisdiction is as far as being able to enforce these, not just cite. That's not our main concern, is can we cite somebody? We want to be able to educate somebody, not only in parks for these codes, but open space, as well as some of our other areas that Parks and Open Space takes care of. We have parks and public purpose areas as well that the park rangers, if we get a report of a dump site, we're gonna respond and ultimately clean that up and investigate, if there's any trash that traces back to somebody, things of that nature. I do think south end of Prison Hill is a hot topic of conversation. I think we have so many special use facilities, you could call, or special use areas. I think having specific codes to the OHV areas as well as rifle range specific codes to where, we could ultimately educate, enforce certain specific codes at those facilities as well. Airsoft and paintball, specifically in open space, I think potentially identifying areas where we could designate that type of use if there were stipulations, with the ammunition that's being used, if it's biodegradable, things of that nature. And then definition of penalty. One thing I noticed in other codes throughout our municipal codes is in Chapter 18, which is public safety, it specifically identifies the penalty, if you don't comply with that code. And I think that would be important to include in our codes as well. So I have quite a list on here. Park closing hours, trail specific. I think Leave No Trace is a really powerful tool that we as park rangers use every single day, specifically in our interpretive programs. Anytime we're educating people, I think incorporating some of those Leave No Trace 7 principles into our municipal codes would really help as well, because I can't tell you how many times we see people go off trail in open space areas as well. And we ultimately stop, educate the public on, why you want to stay on those designated trails, things of that nature. Graffiti is another one that we don't have in Chapter 13. It is in the municipal codes, but it's in, I think, Chapter 8. Firearms we run into a lot with illegal shooting, which we have signage for out in the canyon. And that's one that may be a little different because we're going to get the sheriff's office involved in that scenario. I think a lot of these, the reason that we want these in our Chapter 13 municipal codes is so that the park rangers can handle those types of situations maybe without involving the sheriff's office. And then obviously the off-leash, on-leash with the municipal code. So I could keep going, but I'm gonna go ahead and let you guys, if you have any questions for me or Jen wants to add something.
Jennifer?
Thanks, John. Jennifer Budge, Parks and Recreation Director. So this is just meant to give you a very preliminary introduction to the code. Over the next couple years, we'll be working with the DA's office to update our code, but I just wanted to give you just a very basic, here's a copy of what we have. Just kind of wrap your head around it. Over the next, 4 to 6 months, read it. As issues come up, what are we missing so we can get feedback from you? I really want to have a robust participation from the public when we get into this. I want to involve the public. I want to make sure we have workshops and explain and talk to people about it. We'll contact other agencies, get copies of other codes, borrow information for codes that are working in other areas as well. But I just wanted to give you just a really preliminary introduction to that to get you kind of your mindset ready to go as we get into that. It's going to take a while. The whole city is up getting a code update. So we're just going to wait for our turn, but I want to get ahead of it before the DA's office actually gets around to us so we can be more helpful to them and be efficient, when it's our turn in the codes.
You don't have any, Kurt?
Thanks for coming and presenting this. And I'm looking at this kind of like we looked at the dog situation, which will be part of this, is that ultimately you're going to come back with ideas. I think one of the next steps would be great to get us started in the way it would work well for me, and everybody else can chime in, is ultimately for you to go through this and redline with your and additions and have that as part of the next packet. And we can do, that'd be the next step in my mind, is for, you're the professional and you're the one out there that sees all of these things, and to just redline the 13 codes now, say this doesn't make sense and this is how I would have it worded and so forth. And I guess not really worrying about any legalese to it, because the final will come out at the end and bring that back to us. And I think that would be a great step in the direction that Jennifer wants to take.
I think we could absolutely do that as a next step. I don't think it'll be for the next meeting, though.
Okay.
It may be 6 to 8 months. I want to be clear on kind of what the realistic timeline is for the code update. But,
Well, as he presented, it sounded like he had some great ideas.
oh yeah, John's ready to go.
Yeah, he had some great
If it was
ideas.
our turn at the DA's
Yeah.
office, John would be ready. So, which is great. And I think each of us, I have a whole list above my phone, and when things come up and it's just not even contemplated in the code, or we can't address it, or there's a conflict in language, or, I have like a little cheat sheet that I do, but we recognize that it's just outdated. I mean, the wording is not current to our practices, and we want to make it a tool for us if we have to use it, but also to help guide the public.
And then the only other thing that to start it off is to put open space in the title.
Well, and if you look at the code, I mean, regulations in open space isn't even contemplated in the code, which is not practical. It's just about the creation of the open space program and acquisitions, and there's so much more to the open space program than that, and we recognize that. And the park rangers have their citation authority through a resolution authorized by the Board of Supervisors. I think that needs to be in the code, not in a resolution, that we're authorizing them to, I want to give them the tools to be able to do their job.
Thank you. That's all I had, Madam Chair.
Anyone else have? Yes.
What's the best way for us to, as we see things, collect information and send it to you in an email? Do we collect it and give it up at the next park meeting, next joint meeting?
I think, an email at your convenience is completely fine, and we can compile those comments into that red line document that Chair Meyer suggested, and, maybe we go from there.
Susan Martinovich, thank you very much. This was very helpful. 2 minor things is that I had fun when you go to links and it took you to something that didn't connect. So just kind of keep that in the back of your mind, that links match what it says. And then you brought up great points and recommendations building on Chair's recommendations, is start with the why you would be putting those changes, because I think that's what the story is that you need to tell the public when we go out and present that. So as you're doing it, okay, why, what's the benefit, what's the reason? And you had a lot of great reasons: clarification, consistency, education. So yeah, appreciate your efforts. Thank you.
Anything else? Oh, Mark?
So I've worn this hat for a long time, so I have a different perspective, maybe having done this. So state park rangers can enforce, they have park codes. You have to warn first. And everybody needs to understand, on a misdemeanor, all of these, they have to see it. They can't be told about it, they have to see it. Unless you do a citizen's citation. I don't know if you do those or not, but you can do a citizen citation where they sign the citation. But what my point is that we always went to the NRS every time we could, because it's a better standing in the court system. So are you informing that they only let you cite on the Carson City Code that you have for parks versus NRS or anything else?
Yeah, so we are not peace officers, so we're not post-certified, and that's why we can only enforce that Chapter 13 Municipal Code, and that's, as Jen mentioned, in the provision, because, like I said, we are not post-certified peace officers. We do work closely with the Carson City Sheriff's Office, and they use the NRS for a lot. I like to use NRS as a guideline, but we can cite misdemeanor citations.
Okay, so
In their resolution authorizing their citation authority, it's only related to misdemeanors within the Carson City Municipal Code. So that's the extent of their authorization by the board.
but there's other codes and other, like The fire
Correct,
department
but
has
for,
their codes.
for us, we would have to have the sheriff's office or someone else to enforce those.
So you can only do these papers that you're handing me right now. So these would be like in where I'm, the park codes for specific parks where we have those. So you can enforce those. So you're not, are you carrying weapons?
We do not carry firearms, if that's what you're asking. Yeah, and that's why we want things to be inclusive with parks and open space. So everything that we need to be able to educate the public is in Chapter 13. And we don't have to go outside of Chapter 13 because there are a lot of things right now that we have to go outside of Chapter 13 for, such as firearms, graffiti, dumping, things of that nature.
Well, a lot of those are important elements to be higher up. So what I would envision is you sit down with the sheriff's department. I mean, you're maxed out at a $500 fine, and some of these are very serious offenses. If they're shooting fireworks off on the side of the hill and start a fire or something, you can only cite, you can, for 500. So the sheriff's going to come for those types of things. So you must be in their dispatch system so you can call on those guys to come in, which even the state park rangers call the sheriff in if there's a serious crime. We're not trained to handle investigations and things like that. But I'm asking lots of questions because these codes seem to duplicate a lot what are in NRS and what would be in other agencies for fire and alcohol and firearms and homeless camps and destruction of property. Seems to be, those are in a lot of other places already. You're almost duplicating them and minimizing them to a misdemeanor or with a minimal fine of $500, which misdemeanors are usually higher than that even. So I'm just getting an idea how I should look at these and how you enforce those. And I'm getting a picture now, if you're not post-certified out there. So you don't run wants and warrants, all these things that get you in trouble when you're in the field writing tickets.
So to answer a couple of your questions, we are on with Carson City Dispatch. We have radios, and all 3 park rangers are on with dispatch. So we get great support from the Carson City Sheriff's Office. So if something comes up out in the field, they can respond fairly quick depending on where we're at. Obviously, we have 8,000 acres and all around Carson City, so it can be a little difficult here and there. But dispatch is really good about letting us know that, hey, if you do come across something, there's not deputies available. You know, likely we're not going to go handle whatever that situation may be if a deputy's not available. To your other points, I think our main objective really is in Carson City, in our parks and open space areas, we're there to educate the public on what they, what's exciting about the park, what they can and can't do about the park. The sheriff's office isn't going to do that, which is why I think a lesser, I guess, enforcement officers, for lack of a better term, you could call us. I think that's what our primary objective is to be that kind of middle ground between, I guess, a park maintenance worker and a law enforcement officer, to where we can make contact with the public when they're coming into town, or if it's a resident, if they're coming into a park or an open space area, and educate them on, because we're not just there for enforcement or even education for that matter. We're letting them know that we do interpretive programs, twice a month, things of that nature. So I think that's kind of where that difference is. And we are not post-certified because we report obviously to the Parks and Recreation Department, not the Sheriff's Office. So that's the difference. And it is so different with state park rangers because I've been in that world as well, and national parks. And then you have these municipalities and these other agencies that have park rangers that most times they are not post-certified, and they're working with what we're working with as well. And I think just having that support with the sheriff's office, the local sheriff's office, and things of that nature, just to be able to conduct your tasks, your duties, safely. So hopefully that answered your question. I feel like there's one more.
No, it is, and I think actually these boards need to understand what your level of enforcement is, and that they understand there's consequences. There's actually training. I used to work for Washoe County Parks, and we had that same authority to write citations, but it was never really clarified to us. We even carried guns for a while when I was with Washoe County. It lasted about 6 months. That didn't last very well. But because they didn't know the procedures it takes.
That's
So
probably
there's
why
a
they
lot
don't
to
have
that part of your
citation authority.
job that people don't understand that it's not as clear for you, but when you approach a situation for a simple infraction and it blows up in your face, then that can happen. So they actually have training for law enforcement without weapons. So if you can find some of that, they used to teach it in a college down in California. It's law enforcement without weapons, so you learn how to use other tools that if you get in trouble, which could be a part of that. But I support what you're doing. You know what you're doing. You got it down. But if there's some serious offenses in here, I would question them being here versus using the sheriff's department or whatever arm of the fire department, whoever, to come and help you enforce that with them. So it's not a $500 fine. I'll leave it alone at that. But I like the opportunity to clarify to this group kind of the role you play. And it is a risk when you're out there doing law enforcement at that level. And you do a good job. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate that. And to your point, that was the one that I was forgetting. And when we're on with Carson City Dispatch, we can run individuals, to make sure if they do have outstanding warrants, we're backing away, out of that situation, things of that nature. But to your point about the training that we receive, we actually just trained with Nevada State Park Rangers who are post-certified, and we trained with them at the Stewart Indian School. So we go through a section of their in-service training, which is essentially an extension of post, and they kick us out when they do their firearms training. So we do train with other agencies, Nevada State Parks, Carson City Sheriff's Office, as well as Washoe County. So because we are, I guess, this kind of floating, entity where we don't have a national standard for these municipalities that have park rangers, I reach out constantly to other agencies to where we can find those trainings that we need to make sure that we're up to date on all the tools that we carry, as well as making sure that we can carry out our job safely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll give you guys this part of this process. I'll make sure you get a copy of the resolution that the board approved, so you can kind of wrap your head around their authority. And it refers to NRS, and there's definitions of park rangers in NRS and different levels of that. So it dovetails back to NRS and their authority, but the board authorizes that enforcement in the municipal code. But I'll make sure you get a copy of the resolution, so you can kind of, as we go through the process, wrap your head around that as well.
Thank you. Anybody else? Well, I just want to say it's interesting because just 2 days before I started looking at this, a citizen reached out to me asking, aren't there prohibitions against smoking in parks? And I go, I don't think so. I'll look. And then this came across my desk, and I looked, and I said, no, according to this, it doesn't even mention. Of course, when I saw that this was last updated in 1981, so that may be something we need to look at also, smoking in parks with changes in that sort of regulation. So anyway, yeah, it's more than past time that this was looked at. I don't envy you or us.
Madam Vice Chair?
We got
The Park Commission did discuss prohibiting smoking in parks, but due to a number of challenges, we decided that it was not feasible at this time. So it is something that we can possibly consider in the future.
Yeah.
And if I'm still correct, it is prohibited in the youth facilities, right? The youth parks, as far as Governor's Field and Edmonds. There's no smoking in those parks, are there, Dave? Jen, Dave?
Yes, I think you are correct.
Well,
that
I
there's
just remember
not,
it being officer of the day for Little League and so forth.
But they have been designated areas, but as you can see, there's nothing that's in the code that these guys can fall back on. So
Maybe that was transcendent from the Little League charter or something like that. So anyway.
yeah, that's what I'm thinking, is that the local youth organizations have that within their
charter,
and I think that from them they are involved in making sure that they follow their charter rules and regulations. So
thank you, Dave.
Yep.
Okay, no other comments? Good luck. You're gonna need
It's
it.
gonna be fun. It'll be fun.
I don't think we have anything else to do other than, yeah. All right, onward and upward. Municipal Code, discussion only regarding the Mary B. Ansari Memorial Bench Interpretive Sign Project. This is a fun one.
Thank you, Madam
Right.
Chair. For the record, Greg Bergeron, Trails Coordinator. So we'll take a step back from discussions of municipal codes and talk about something a little different. I just wanted to take a few minutes and talk about the generous donation from the Nazir and Mary Ansari Foundation. Their donation funded placement of 4 very nice park benches and 3 interpretive signs at various locations along the historic Virginian Truckee Railroad grade on Lakeview Hill. And these benches were placed as a memorial to Dr. Mary Ansari, who passed away a year ago this month. Mary was a local historian and author, and she wrote 6 books, including Nevada Heartland, Carson City Place Names, Comstock Place Names, Mines and Mills of the Comstock, Place Names of Douglas County, and Place Names of Lyon County. And Mary was a philanthropist and an avid outdoors person who was passionate about preserving the history of the Virginian Truckee Railroad for future generations. So this bench and sign project really complements the efforts of the Historic Virginian Truckee Trail Working Group, whose mission it is to create a route of multi-use paths and bike lanes which follows as much as possible the alignment of the Virginian Truckee Railroad and connects 5 counties in northern Nevada: Carson City, Washoe, Douglas, Lyon, and Story. And the trail, ultimately, its goals are to offer, and provide recreation along with alternative transportation, showcase the beauty of our region, and educate residents and visitors about the history of the V&T Railroad, Native American populations, mining, ranching, and farming. And these interpretive signs perfectly complement that educational component of the Virginian Truckee Rail Working Group. And they're the first interpretive signs to be placed anywhere on the historic Virginian Truckee Trail. And I wanted to kind of go through each of those signs. So my favorite is Moving Through Time, which is located at a location above Coombs Canyon with an outstanding view of Carson City, and several historic locations and moments in time are identified on that sign, including the Gumalonga Trail, which is the namesake for our newly named Gumalonga Open Space. It speaks to the ancestral lands of the Washoe people, the arrival of the Virginian Truckee Railroad, the first air flight in Nevada, and the 1919 Transcontinental Convoy, which was led by then Lieutenant Colonel Dwight Eisenhower, who later, as president, initiated the interstate highway system, a segment of which is visible from that location. And it's a perfect location to host interpretive programs, and in fact, we've already held one there just a couple of weeks ago. And then there's the Lakeview sign, which was placed at the Lakeview Park. And that one describes the former V&T station that used to be located there. It talks about the Marlette Flume to Virginia City, historic logging in the Carson Range, and the emergence of cars and trucks, which ultimately foresaw the end of the Virginian Truckee train. And the third sign is the Lakeview Tunnel, which is also one that I really like because it was placed in a location where from which a 1937 photo was taken showing a train approaching the summit at Lakeview, and you can look down the trail from that location, and you can just envision the train because essentially very little has changed other than that the tracks are no longer there. So it's kind of fun. So let's see. I'm told that Mary's favorite hikes were on the Lakeview Railroad grade, and I'm also told that this was the location of her final hike before she passed. I've got some more information about Mary, and I'll leave that for the commissioners and committee members when I leave. And then lastly, I wanted to mention that assistance from the Ansari Foundation continues, and we're currently working on an additional sign that will display a graphic rendering of the plans for the entire length of the historic Virginian Truckee Rail Trail. And with that, I'll open it up if there's any questions or comments.
Yes.
I live in Lakeview, and after I saw the agenda item, I made the walk and read the interpretive signs, and I learned more on that 30-minute walk than I have in the 20 years that I've lived in Lakeview. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Good. I'm glad to hear that, because that's the intent.
I just want to say that you guys did a great job on that. It's very, very, very beautiful and fun. And Donna and I met on the trail.
We ran into each other.
Yeah, ran into each other when she was locating those and so forth for the map. And she's very excited about it. And I went and told a lot of people that were history buffs and so forth about the V&T Trail, you know, or the V&T Railroad. And they went right up there and they said the same thing about learning things they didn't know. So I think it was a job well done. Thank you very much.
And I will let you know that the Historic Virginian Truckee Trail has received our 501c3. We are official. And I am right now, it's at the top of my list of many things to do, working on a grant application for Nevada Energy for more signage to get the signs up from Hobart Road now to City Park in Reno. And our goal is to hold in September of 2023, all things working out, to hold our first river-to-river ride. So we're plugging along. And if you know of anybody who might be interested in being a board member for the Historic Virginian Truckee Trail, we're especially looking for board members from Washoe County, Lyon County, and Story County. So, but yeah, I'm looking for I hope to get that grant, and we will be putting up in those interpretive signs through Carson City and all the way from Hobart Road to City Park in Reno. So you'll be seeing those signs all the way along, just that kind of signage all along the trail.
Donna, you might contact for Washoe County. They're hiring a trails coordinator, so perhaps they'd be interested in participating for your board.
Oh, they are, huh?
Also, Truckee Meadows, today was the second day of a person who's responsible for all of Truckee Meadows now. It's the
Who's
second
that?
day. Daniel, we hired him, the Truckee Meadows plan that we put together.
Yeah,
We hired a full-time person to be responsible for all the trails within Truckee Meadows. His
Daniel,
name's Daniel, and I'll hook you up with.
send me the email, send me his link.
He'll be somebody to contact to move it forward that will work with Washoe County too, so
Yeah.
it's really, it's a full-time position like Greg's. And-
Right.
And then Washoe County's hiring a full-time person, so it's pretty cool.
I'll check with Joanne Loudon on Washoe County.
They're all copying us.
Yeah, send me the information, because getting this 5 counties coordinated is challenging. Oh, and I just got a call from a journalist in Montana who is writing an article on the 10 best rail trails in Nevada. Didn't know we had 10, and we're being included in that article. So, anyway, I don't want to spend more time if anybody else has any other comments, but we really appreciate what the Ansari Foundation has been doing for us. They've been just wonderful. They've given us the first bits. I mean, just kind of handed this to us. And it's really great, and they're beautiful signs, and it's like set the bar really high for the rest. Yes.
Can I ask, what kind of donation was that? How much did that cost to get those benches and signs put together?
I don't have the number right in front of me, but it was just under 10,000.
And we're gonna get the rest of the signs up through Carson City. One of these days, we're gonna have a party to go put up signs. We've just been really busy with other things. So,
All right, thank you.
thank you, Greg. All right, moving on. For possible action, we're gonna do something. We're gonna accomplish something. Discussion and possible action regarding proposed updates to the Parks and Recreation Open Space Department, fee policy and schedule, and possible recommendation to the Board of Supervisors. Jennifer.
Thank you. Jennifer Budge, Parks and Recreation Director. We were so appreciative of all your support to get a policy through to the board to establish some guidelines for our policies, our fees, and our practices, so we're fair and equitable. The policy's gone really well. In the policy, we promised that we would come back on an annual basis to review it and see how things are going, if we had any issues with user groups, if there were any challenges, and to update fees as necessary. I can report back to you that the fee policy is going really well. It's really helped create confusion with user groups that had different arrangements or understandings, and we're being, everybody's on the same page and same level playing field. Also, the fee structure is a lot easier to explain to the public. I can just tell you, we used to have commercial and resident and non-resident, and we had all these different tiers within the fee structure, and it was just very confusing for staff and for the public. So I think it's really simplified what we're doing. The only change to the policy we're recommending is on page 5 of the policy, and it's section 4.3.1. And we're suggesting adding a clarification for the nonprofit organizations that can get co-sponsorships or fee waivers, and that's a limited event series, so like movies in the park. We have a partner for that, or concerts in the park, where we might do 3 or 4 in the summer instead of it's just one-time annual event, and we want to be able to provide that waiver for the whole series. We also have, for example, the community, is it the community band that's at the theater as well, typically does a series of concerts that are free for the public. So we just wanted to clarify that it doesn't have to just be a one-time annual event, that we could authorize a series of activities related with that nonprofit. And then Dan's going to walk us through real quick the proposed changes in the fee schedule to just clarify. Some are just some typos to clean up from last time, and a few clarifications and any questions you might have on that section.
Thanks, Jen. Dan Arp, Recreation Superintendent, for the record. So if you have your attachment, I'll just kind of go through these really quick. Like, so there's not many. There's a few things that kind of popped up. This, you want to, you think my vision's that bad?
Mine is.
So some of them, yeah, as Jen said, some of them are typos. Some of them are just things that are new programs or things that popped up this last year that we wanted to add, or just things that we had a fee for or we needed to have a fee for that we just didn't realize that was something that we would charge for. So kind of moving through on this page 1. The first one's actually not listed on yours. It was pointed out to us, another typo that we would have had to present next year if we didn't catch it today. So, but the youth fees for the pool at the aquatic facility, we have it listed for the 1 month membership as $38, and that should be $39, which is the same as a senior rate and the same as what we do at the MAC as well. So we have it listed for $38, it's supposed to be $39. But then just moving down a few lines from there, we had the annual membership for adults listed as $402. That was a typo. It's supposed to be $315. So because we have an equation that we're following, percentage discounts per thing. So that's $315 is according to the math. $402 is probably my recreation math. And then same thing, another typo on family passes. We had $99 listed for the 10 punch pass, and according to the equation, it should be $105. And then towards the bottom of that page, we had $350 listed for showers, and then our aquatic manager wanted to drop that to $3 just to be the same and not more than it is just to use the weight room. Just so that those are on the same, because we have the weight room only fee is $3, so we just want to make those the same. Moving on to page 2, these are pretty much all those that are changed are our Red Cross fees. Red Cross raised their fees, or what we pay for the fee, by $5 to get the certification. So we're just raising all of our rates $5 to accommodate that. The only significant change that we're requesting, our facility, like every aquatic facility or almost every aquatic facility across the country, is having a hard time right now in recruiting lifeguards. We're really short-staffed, like many facilities. And one reason we're finding for that is when there's so many places that are seeking employment of that kind of age group that we hire, and we make lifeguards pay to take a class of $165 or $75, depending on what we were doing before, to get certified. Why would they want to work for us when they can go work somewhere else and they don't have to pay to get a job? So if we know that a lifeguard is going to work for us and they're going through the certification, we want to be able to waive that fee and offer the class for free for those who are going to be employed. We're going to keep that fee in place for anyone who, we do certifications for other agencies. We do the training for them, so we'll keep those fees in place, but it's only the ones that want to work for us. And then luckily we have a couple pages where we don't really have any edits. Page 5, this is just minor. It was just, it's not even changing a fee. We're just adjusting the title of the name for our projectors, the amount of lumens that are included on there. We updated those. Going on page 6, we added a dodgeball tournament this year, which we're going to try and do annually as a fundraiser for our youth scholarship program. So that's $100 a team. So we added that fee to be able to continue to do that. Our Shred Kids ski and snowboard program, the rates for the busing and from Boreal went up for us. So we were charging $185 for that. We were anticipating move up to $199 this year, knowing some of those fees were going to increase, but then those fees increased even more. And so we're needing to bump that up to $215. We accidentally crossed out the whole thing on there, but $215 is the correct fee that we need to charge for that to be able to cover our costs for that program. And then we added this line for other outdoor recreation activities. As many of you know, we got a grant last year from the hospital to do an outdoor recreation program. We don't want to break down all those snowshoe trips and kayaking trips and have fees for all those. Basically, those vary a little bit depending on how far of a distance they are. So we're just saying that we're basing those fees, whatever we charge for those, to just make sure we're covering 100% of our costs. We're not trying to get profit on those, just whatever our costs are. So we didn't list a fee there, but that's the 100% cost recovery for that line item. On page 7, at the very top, on the left column for ball field rentals, we just want to clarify that that was a 3-hour time slot. So there could be multiple time slots throughout the day, but it's just for 3 hours. And then a few edits there where we had those fees written down as per day, and we're just doing that as per field. So those next 4 or so lines, that fee for $50 or $88 is just per field for that 3-hour time slot. And then we also this is one of those examples of where we had situations that come up that we didn't realize we needed fees for. Usually if we rent a field, it's to use the fields, but occasionally there's people who just want to use the parking lot and block that off. So we needed to add that on there. Was the Pete Livermore Sports Complex parking lot for $150 a day, and then also a damage cleaning deposit as well, if needed. Further down, under sports fields, we just changed the name to the Carson Ridge Disc Golf Park, because I don't think when we were doing this a year or so ago, we knew what the official name was going to be. So that was just updated to reflect the name, and then we added the next line below that. We didn't have a cleaning deposit or damage deposit for that rental. We just want to make sure that we have that consistently for all of our rentals, that we have that in place. So if there is damage, we do have a fee that we can charge. Page 8, under permits, we just changed the name of that first line, overnight camping, per vehicle, event organizers, participants, and vendors only. It was just a clarification. This was coming from our reservations coordinator, I think, just to kind of help her with the wording. We added a few lines down. We added a food truck vendor line item, so we're starting to see more and more of those happening at our events, so we wanted a fee to charge for that. And then the next line under there, we just wanted to clarify that through Carson City Health Department, that is not our fee that we're making up. It's we are passing that fee along, but that's a required fee from the health department. But we often manage those as we're getting event permits and requests. No changes on the rifle and pistol range. So skipping down to page 9. For the Fuji and the fairgrounds, just the commercial kitchen. This was a request from our reservations coordinator just to round things up for a simpler number. It was $83. She'd asked it to be $85, just a bit simpler when she's doing transactions with renters. Same thing with the barn rental from $248 to $250. So just changing $2 just to make it a easier number to manage. And then down at Silver Saddle Ranch, we created a rental, which was new for that facility, but we realized that we needed a small group rental similar to a picnic pavilion. They don't have a picnic pavilion out there, but just kind of smaller groups that aren't using a lot of the facilities out there of under 50 people. That's $110 a day, which is consistent with our park pavilions. And then the next one in red is trail runs not staging on our city property. We had this situation come up, realizing there are trail runs that are hosted somewhere else, but they may cross our trails at some point. We just wanted to clarify that we're not charging if they're using our trails for that momentary, if they're not staging the event on our facilities or property. And then this was added from the parks equipment, something that we rent out for events. This is wire looms and cords, $100 a day, so we added that. And then the last page, page 10, like I said, we had the outdoor program. It was new. At the time when we were coming up with these fees, we hadn't actually acquired most of the equipment that we're using for the outdoor program and also that we're allowing to be rented to the community. So as we've run these programs and we needed to acquire some additional things, particularly paddle jackets, pants, things that are make more comfortable for our participants, we bought those with the grant funds, and then we might as well make them available for the public to rent if we have them. So we added those since we didn't know we were going to get those. But that is kind of a quick rundown of changes, taking a lot of that. But if you have any questions, I'd be happy to try and answer those.
Thanks for that report. My first question was, so we have American Red Cross lifeguard certification at $77, but we're going to make that free. But the certification for the non-employee is moving from $165 to $170. So was that? Would you clarify that? I'm not.
Yes. So
I'm not tracking with the Red Cross increase and so forth.
Right. So the standard fees that are pretty common nationwide for the American Red Cross lifeguard is somewhere in that $160, $175 range is what's being charged, give or take, depending on facilities. When we did this fee proposal last year, we had proposed a $77 fee for residents in hopes that they would work for us to try and make it cheaper. And we're realizing that's still not enough. Like so that $77 was kind of already a subsidized fee to try and help recruitment. And then everything else that's going on in the world just made it that much harder to get recruitment. So we're trying to see if we're hoping that by reducing that fee entirely for employees who are committed to working for us, I shouldn't say employees, people who are intending to work for us that we intend to hire, that we remove that barrier. And then we're just going to have the standard fee that's pretty much the industry standard nationwide of, was it 170?
170, yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess my question, does part of that fee when we charge somebody 170, does part of that fee go to the certification and the materials that are supplied by the Red Cross?
Yes. So that's going to cover what our portion is to Red Cross for the certification and the book and everything like that, and then also covering our staff time.
So there's nothing on top of that?
No, if they pay that, they'll get the whole.
They'll get all the supplies from the Red Cross at
Correct.
the same time. Thanks. That's what I probably should have phrased my question like that. But anyway, thank you for that explanation. As far as the fee for the the Dodgeball Tournament, that's a fundraiser. How does that, are we charging $100 and that automatically goes into a pot to the scholarship? So can we call that a fee? Do you follow what I'm saying here? Because all of these other fees are going to the general fund. This fee is ultimately going to a scholarship program, and do you follow what I'm tracking here?
Thank you. Jennifer Budge, Parks and Recreation Director. So what we do is we put it into our donation account, and then all expenses for that event come out of the donation
have
account.
Got it.
So it is in the general fund, but there's a donation account that carries over from year to year, and we can use it for designated purposes. And then the Board of Supervisors for the rifle range, all the revenue that comes in for the rifle range goes back into the rifle range operations.
So kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you for that explanation.
I just came up with one additional change I think we probably need to do is when we came up with the policy, we didn't have our outdoor recreation program at the time, so we didn't have cost recovery goals for that. And we should probably note that on page 10, where it talks about levels of service. So we have level 3 are activities that are 50 to 100%, and then we have level 4, which are 100% or greater. So we probably want to put them in the level 3 for our outdoor recreation program, whether it's youth or adult. And that way we can gear any new programs or prices accordingly.
Anybody else have? Yes.
Mary Bird for the record. Dan, did you say, just out of curiosity, the ski program goes to Oriole?
Correct. So we used to do a junior ski program that went up to Diamond Peak, and that kind of dissolved. I'm not sure how many years ago, before I came on 5 years ago, as far as our involvement in it. Six-ish. So right before I got here, I guess. So in an effort to try and bring a program back, Boreal just was the one that was offering. It turned into a bit more of a teen night program on Friday nights because Boreal's the only one that offers night skiing with the lights. So we've done it. This will be the 3rd season. We didn't do it last year because of COVID. And it's been working really well going up there on Friday nights, and they have a great package that they offer.
Oh, cool. Thank you.
Yes.
A couple comments. Jennifer, Susan Martinovich for the record. Jennifer, I attended a concert on Sunday with the community band, and they made a point of complimenting the Parks and Rec for the ability to use the facilities for free concert, and so it was very much recognized and very much appreciated. So good program there.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it. And I failed to include your the application they have to fill out to qualify for a co-sponsorship, but one of the requirements is they should be acknowledging the city and advertising that as a co-sponsored activity. So that way we're helping, to the public show that we're supporting each other in the community.
Well, they did, so they followed through. Cool. There was a public comment that was submitted later on this item, and it had to do with the website and being up to date a little bit. And so my question is a lot of these, are people able to sign up for these, like the fields? Do they go on the website, or do they have to call in? And how do they pay these fees? I know how the pool works. You go and pay, but how do the other facilities, do people utilize and pay for the funds?
It varies depending on what it is. For the most part, most of these are in our ActiveNet system, which is our registration software. So any of the recreational fees, any of the reservations for any of our facilities, we have that built out on ActiveNet. So some of those are available for people to go online and register on their own. Some of them they have to call, like mostly the reservations, particularly like for park reservations, we don't have that available to just go online and reserve for the most part. And so you have to call and do those. That should cover most of our fees. There might be an occasional thing that's kind of an odd one where it's only a call-in, but we should pretty much have almost everything through our ActiveNet software.
I think for most of our reservable items, that's in ActiveNet. Things like the rifle range, you pay for drop-in use on site. We have envelopes. We deposit the money accordingly. There's drop-in, obviously, at the MAC and at the pool. So there's some on-site transactions rather than through the website. If you have a special event that you're planning, say at Mills Park or a sports complex, that you have to work with staff so we can make sure we meet all the special event requirements, and there's a lot more coordination. And then we have a reservations coordinator that handles all that for the public. So we do have a dedicated staff person to assist the public with those needs that are not quite straightforward.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, would anyone like to make a motion?
I can do it. Well, I think I can do it. There was some amendments, so I'll give it a try. So I move to make a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors for approval of the proposed fee policy updates with the addition of outdoor recreation cost recovery in level 3 of services as mentioned by Director Budge, and the amendment of the youth monthly aquatic pass to $39. Did I catch it?
Woo! Wow, that was good. Is there a second?
I'll second that one.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes. Okay, moving right along. Discussion and possible action regarding a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors to amend the schedule for joint meetings of the Open Space Advisory Committee and Parks and Recreation Commission to hold one joint meeting annually as needed. Jennifer.
Thank you. Jennifer Budge, Parks and Recreation Director. So this was actually a request from Chair Welsh, who's not here. So I do know Member Kimbrough was involved, I think, maybe in a conversation about this. But there's been comments about the requirement of having 2 joint meetings a year, which was directed by the Board of Supervisors in 2018. Is that working for you guys? Is it something you want to change? Should we look at only doing at least once a year to change that language? It's more of a check-in with you to see how that's working and get sort of the temperature of the 2 groups.
Christine Curry, one of the newer members on the board. What does it mean to have a reduced joint meeting requirement to once per year or as needed? What kinds of things become as needed? I imagine just looking at the agenda here, when those things come up, then it would be needed.
It would be something that we would work with the chairs on if you all have agenda items that you think are coming up. Let's say there's a subdivision coming in and it impacts parks and open space, or there's like a trail issue or something that we need to come forward, and we think that either as staff or as members, that would be a great opportunity for a joint meeting so we can publicly discuss this. Then we could schedule something as needed, but not maybe having the requirement to meet. And we definitely don't want to meet just to meet. We never want to waste your time, your volunteers. We really appreciate your time, and you're taking time away from your family to hang out with us. And so we would work together to schedule those as needed.
Any other comments?
Susan Martinovich, do you feel that there's business not getting done? Or, yeah.
No, this did not come from staff. This came, from a representative from all of you. And, I think, I don't want to speak for everybody. I think it's going well, and we do sort of move and adjust as needed. We cancel meetings if there's not a sufficient agenda. But obviously, like tonight, we have a pretty robust agenda because we haven't met, and we have a lot to cover. So, no, I don't think there's anything we're not addressing from that perspective.
Lindsay Boyer, Open Space Manager. I think from the staff perspective, we feel like it's working. We kind of earmark items for the joint meeting. We try really hard to make sure that the items that we bring to you are relevant to both committees, so we're not, again, wasting your guys' time. I think scheduling-wise, there's 14 people in this room plus staff, so it's nice to have something that's just on the calendar. So the as-needed concept is a little hard for me to get on board with, just because it could be challenging to then find something that works for everyone else versus having something that's just designated on the calendar seems to work really well, so.
And I guess I'll just continue, or that was a little bit of where I was coming from, is that if it's hard for you as staff to have duplicate items for both boards, you do it, but if there's an opportunity where you as staff only have to do it once, that seems to be a benefit and an efficiency to the city. So I guess I would recommend leaving it as is if it's not broken.
Well,
I'm gonna work from angle of history. A long time ago, there were the Carson River Open Space Parks and Rec. I was involved a long time ago about involving putting Carson River's group, because staff was so busy, all they were doing is putting work together for meetings, was to put Carson River with open space. So then that happened, but there was some compromise about Parks and Rec was maybe going to take open space too. So Parks and Rec would grab it all. And I don't mean grab it, but I meant they'd be that was a bad term. They would be the board that represents all three of those. So it came to a compromise that you would have open space and Park and Rec meet twice a year. And to me, that means the open space or Park and Rec waits 4 months sometimes to deal with issues you'd like to internally talk about, and have that as a higher priority on your agenda versus mandatory 2 meetings a year that maybe 3 years from now, they got to make up the agenda just so you'd have something for both groups to discuss. And I really fought to keep Carson River as a part of the open space because it disappeared a little bit too. So I think if by having these meetings, it diminishes those groups, their ability to work in the community as an open space group and as a Park and Rec group. Why are they meeting twice a year if there's no split to me? So one of the lead people in that was very agreeable to the fact that, let's have it once a year, but if there's enough, then yeah, sure, have it twice a year. But looking for the future and not diminishing the river group that disappeared in this shuffle, but keeping them separate and as separate bodies, to me makes a lot of strength for what we represent to this community. And having this many people speak at one meeting versus being able to deal it down with a smaller group to really get into the discussion I had with the law enforcement officer, maybe that would be stronger if it was just open space versus Park and Rec, but maybe not. That might be a bad example because they do a lot for Parks and Rec. So that I was one of the ones who pursued and got Alan involved and talked to Lori Bagwell, and actually we talked to Lisa too. So to see that picture, to not diminish what we were trying to do, and it just diminished it one more level again. That the Carson River to me has almost disappeared. So that's why that was there. But I didn't know staff supported this so much. I hadn't had that feedback till tonight, that you guys like it that way. So I'm always one to support staff, but I would hope you understand why I made that request and why it's on the agenda tonight. And from that perspective, I'll let it go at that.
What if we went with a compromise in a way? And I appreciate the background, Mark. That what if it wasn't mandatory? I mean, we had the one, and then to address your concerns, Lindsay, maybe you still schedule the possibility of the other on the schedule if needed, or if things come up, then there's that. That may be a way to, and as needed or not needed.
I think that's sort of how the wording is. So it would be hold one joint meeting annually and then as needed, but maybe we could tentatively schedule that as needed one so we can all plan on it for the coming year. I do think, and we'll have to get some guidance from Ben, but I believe if we do move forward with a change, we will have to go to the Board of Supervisors and likely amend the bylaws for each board to make sure that everything matches. So there are, some deliverables and tasks associated with that change, should the board approve that.
As the only one who's from open space. I don't know how many from Parks and Rec who has been involved in this since that change first happened. I can tell you that what I have seen, it's been a bit of a waste of time sometimes for us. I think many of us, or some of us from open space have seen, we've been in meetings, joint meetings, where we're dealing with Parks and Rec stuff that didn't have anything to do with open space. And we're sitting here in open space going, well, we're dealing with Parks and Rec, but we're open space. And then we've had open space issues come up in a joint meeting that Parks and Rec really didn't have anything to discuss. Now, this particular meeting tonight has been more of a joint meeting than I've seen many times. So when I first saw this come up, I thought, oh, fine, thanks, finally. I really thought, yeah, I'm all in favor of doing this. But if these are truly joint meetings and we deal only with joint issues, but at the same time, if we're doing this twice a year, there are open space issues we're not dealing with and Parks and Rec issues we're not dealing with, that becomes an issue too. And I know where Mark's coming from because I remember when open space absorbed crack, or some of you don't remember that whole joke. And I think that at one time, Parks and Rec absorbs Shade Council. Isn't that the case, that was disbanded? And so we keep absorbing organizations, we get encumbered, and then it's hard to deal with the issues that we need to deal with because there's so much to be dealt with. So, you know, it makes it difficult. Yes, Jennifer.
Jennifer Budge, Parks and Recreation Director. I really appreciate your comments, and I want you to know that when we have joint meetings, staff works really hard to make sure that we have items that pertain to both boards. I appreciate your time. You're all volunteers, and I want to make sure you have items that pertain to that. And we've even added language at the bottom of the future agenda items to remind everyone of what sort of things should be on the joint agenda. So it says joint meeting topics may include natural resource management, development review, trails, community outreach, education, park ranger roles and responsibilities, planning, grants, operations, maintenance, and other items that are prevalent throughout the entire park system. When I say the entire park system, that includes open space. So we really try to do that. If there's examples of items that you don't feel are appropriate at joint meetings, please let us know so we can avoid that. We don't want to waste your time. So I feel like we've tried very hard to be considerate of that, and I recognize that these meetings end up being very long, and that's a lot. But I do think the joint conversation at times is very valuable and important too. So if you have examples of items that you didn't feel were appropriate, you know, you don't have to say it here if you're not comfortable. Please just, you know, let the staff know, and we'll do our best to try to avoid that. Every now and then we've had something that's maybe time sensitive and we need approved to get to the board. So that's been the case. But I mean, the only one I can really think of is when we renamed the archery range. And I know that's really not a joint thing, but we had to get that through related to someone that passed away. So that's really the only one I can think of that probably wasn't quite, you know, the
Specific
joint.
things now, but you know, especially in the beginning.
Sure.
I think that's when we were seeing it. And we had one particular OSAC member who was really,
We heard, yeah, we did.
and it was very vocal about that.
Yes, and we appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, I'm actually comfortable with either option, but truly, I think the 2 joint meetings a year is valuable and worthwhile. I appreciate learning more about some of these areas that might have more of a focus on open space, but actually do impact Parks and Rec. And my hope is it's vice versa on that. The presentation today, the park ranger, and having that discussion and having the added perspective of Mr. Kimbrough and his background, it was really helpful to hear that. So I support that. I also, now I just lost my train of thought. I'll think of it. Anyway, so I support it.
You just want to have a meeting with your sister.
That's right. Remember. Okay. That's woo. So then those areas that really are more time sensitive, I mean, really, if it is a critically time sensitive agenda item, in that case, it can come before open space at their meeting, and then it can come before Parks and Rec at our meeting. While it's more work for staff, it helps to address the issue in a more timely fashion. That might be a way to mitigate that. And if there isn't a need for the second joint meeting, it's easy enough to cancel. But having it on the books makes that time available, and we all know to schedule for it.
I know Mark and Donna, they have this wealth of knowledge, and I don't have that. So it's very helpful for me to like kind of help get my feet on the ground of an overall picture. And I like the idea, if there's nothing for the second meeting of the year, it can easily be canceled, but keeping it on the books is kind of an important thing. And I think as in our individual committees, it's important for us to make sure we don't overlook the river. It's our job in our committee to make sure that that still is a focal point. So as a newbie, I think as long as these meetings they are really helpful for me.
And I agree that the meetings together are wonderful. We're learning lots, and hopefully they're learning some stuff over here as far as Mark and talking to the park ranger and understanding that. I knew a lot of it because I worked with the park departments for so long, but at the same time, those questions directed to him educated us in a way that probably wouldn't have happened if we didn't have a joint meeting like this. So I echo what you're saying, is that the learning curve it's great to have everybody here talking together, and I'm for keeping it the way it is unless you can see the agenda is not coming together, and that's something that, but with, rewriting the chapter 13 with the dog park things and stuff like that, I can see a lot of things that we all have equal, and we can bring different things to light because of it. So I like the way it is.
It's for possible action, so if there is a motion, then you could handle that. If there's no motion, then it would just die. No, a no vote would be as is. If someone wants to make a motion, you can see if there's a second to see if that would progress to a possible vote. So I think a suggestion might be you could ask if anyone would like to make a motion.
Call for a motion, see if you get one. You're not going to get one here.
There you go. Thank you. We can always revisit this at a later date. Please know that we're always open to that discussion.
The bylaw or the ordinance is fixed. We won't need to meet anymore.
You might not
That should
want
never
to. You might
happen.
just be done with all of us.
By the time we get them all fixed, it'll be time to start over again. So, okay, now the meeting schedule. Discussion and possible action regarding the Parks and Recreation Commission, discussion and possible action regarding the Open Space Advisory Committee meeting schedule for calendar year 2022. Who's Lindsay?
Yep. So for the record, Lindsay Boyer, Open Space Manager. So we have for you guys a draft schedule based on meeting the third Monday of every other month. I did just have a typo pointed out. So February 22nd should actually be February 28th.
We have a holiday. so we
Due to
have
the
move.
holiday. So that would be the only change reflected there. But essentially, this is the meeting schedule as proposed, and please let me know if you have any questions.
Any questions, anybody? No? Okay, do I have a motion?
Motion to approve the proposed meeting agenda times.
With the
With
change,
the correction of February 28th instead of February 22nd.
is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? The motion is passed. Are you going to send this out with the corrections?
Mhm.
Thank you. Okay, and then for possible action, discussion and possible action regarding Parks Recreation, I probably should let you do this one, Kurt.
So Lindsay, do you want to take it or do you want me just to roll with it? Does everybody have the upcoming schedule?
I do have one change on the schedule.
Okay, so go
We'll
ahead,
need
Jen.
to, sorry about that, we need to change August 2nd to August 16th because the first Tuesday of every August is National Night Out. So we typically move our meeting schedule so we can actually get to the park and get in the building.
So this is,
August 2nd should read August 16th.
so middle of August. Oh, gosh, that's gonna be hard for me to remember. So, as for the Park and Rec Commission out there, does everybody like the looks of next year's schedule? All right, so do I have a motion? Okay, second? Okay, all in favor? All right, we're gonna move on with the schedule with the correction of the 16th of August. Back to you.
Thank you. Staff updates, discussion only, director's report, update regarding departmental projects, programs, grants, recruitment for vacation positions, and Board of Supervisors action items. Jennifer.
Jennifer Budge, Parks and Recreation Director. We're in the process of filling our sports field coordinator position. And then we have 2 park maintenance worker position full-time. And we have the majority of our seasonal positions open as well. So lifeguards, cashiers, staff at the MAC, sports staff, open space, maintenance, you name it. We've got a lot of fun, great opportunities, entry-level positions available. And then you have a copy of the Board of Supervisors action items in your packet if you have any questions.
Any questions or comments? I do have one comment. On the Board of Supervisors, I just realized this. You always put in what was for action, but you never put the results.
So these items were all approved as written.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it just kind of would be nice to know.
So, yeah, I mean, we could go through and make it past tense. Patty just transposes them from the board agenda items, so they were all approved as written.
Okay. But maybe just a note saying approved, it would be nice.
Appreciate that, yeah. We can do that.
Okay, members' announcements? Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've got 3 or 4 items. First off, did you know that our disc golf course was mentioned very favorably in a national publication in October. And the members of the disc golf community want to build another disc golf course. They're looking for locations in this city, and they're willing to put in money and sweat equity. They will be letting us know in the spring if they find a piece of property. Did you know that?
We were unaware of that. Thank you.
They have just decided that they want to do that, so. And then I'd like to talk about the park rangers. I've had 2 interactions with park rangers in the last little bit, and they've been very favorable, I guess. The first was at Bonanza that the vice chair and I worked, and we met the new park ranger. She was very nice. She was authoritative, but she wasn't overbearing. The crowd really liked her, so that was nice. And then Saturday at Sonoma, we had a dog bite incident, and Tyler responded. He was kind and considerate to the dog bite victim. And then when the paramedics, the sheriff's office, and animal control showed up, you could see there was a level of respect between him and the other agencies, and it was nice to see them working so well together for the benefit of the victim. So I'm thinking we done good in hiring them, and they're an asset to the community. Just wanted that on the record because they were both excellent. And then some of the regular users at Sonoma want to put in an agility course for the dogs. And again, they're willing to raise the money and put sweat equity into it if it's okay with the Parks Department. And again, this would be a project for the spring. So that's basically what I have.
I don't even know where to begin. That's a lot to unpack.
Thank you for the information.
That's a lot to unpack. I do want to thank Commissioner Cartwright and Kiever for volunteering at Bonanza and helping run our booth. And there were, thousands of kids there. It was wonderful. It was a great event. It was so nice to be outside and not stuck in the community
And hopefully
center.
we'll be invited to do it again next year.
You are welcome to volunteer at any event. We will have you there. As far as the agility course, if someone would maybe capture that even in just like a one-page proposal so we can kind of wrap our head around what they're proposing and, how they're going to raise the money for it and maintain it, that would be really helpful. And then we'll follow up with the disc golf folks about, whatever they're always coming up with all kinds of stuff. So they're very enthusiastic. Yep. Thank you.
Anybody else? Yes,
I have a comment.
Dave?
Thank you. I'm Dave Whitefield. Yeah, in the spirit of no meeting being complete without mention of pickleball, I want to thank.
No meetings that you're in.
Yeah, right. I want to thank Director Budge, Dan Arp, and Scott Chapman at the MAC for their help with our intro to pickleball classes, which occurred on the 6th, the 13th, and the 20th of the month as part of the Quality of Life celebration. And they were a very successful event. We taught, I think, over 60 new players how to play pickleball. And we had over somewhere around 24 volunteer coaches out of our players group that spent 2 hours each of those Saturday mornings helping introduce the game and the sport to a bunch of new people. And we really appreciate the staff's help and everything that the MAC did for us to make that happen. It was a really fun event, and I think probably overall helped the community and hopefully help participation at the MAC. So thank you very much.
Is there somebody else down this end?
Thank you. I met with a gal who is very interested in beautification and improvement of the walkway on Solomon, Seeliger to Kuntz. And Greg Bergeron's been amazing. He's been wonderful in terms of speaking with her and putting her in contact with other city folks. And, I know it's one of those difficult situations in that it's a walking path and it's really more public works in terms of pavement and asphalt and everything. But I really see this as a wonderful opportunity to come up with a strategy to work with local organizations or neighborhood improvement groups to kind of, to collaborate for things like the beautification side of things. I know there's a lot of work involved. There's grading, there's the weed barrier, there's heavy equipment usage, but these folks are super eager and really wanting to do their part to help beautify that area, and I think it's a wonderful opportunity to do that. So thank you to Greg and to everyone who has spoken with her.
And thank you. I'm aware of that individual. She's been so kind and she's very enthusiastic. I have put her in touch with our transportation manager because that is a right of way. And there is some, I think, plans. I don't know if it's this year, coming up fiscal year or the one after, but there are plans, within the budget to put improvements for that pathway in there. And I'm not sure the level of, beautification and landscaping that would go with that, but we have put them in contact so they could talk to each other. And I think she's also contacted the Parks Foundation as well.
Right, great, thank you.
I just had a quick question about a bathroom. Is there a bathroom that will be put in somewhere to service the Ashton Kings Canyon Trail? Because I know people from Truckee and Tahoe and Reno and all over the place come to that trail and they don't go to the top of Kings Canyon. They park at Pooh Corner because they like to do the loop. And I've had multiple people ask me, where can I go to the bathroom? And it's like, oh, there's a sagebrush. So I just wanted to kind of throw that out there for future mulling over, that somewhere around that area there needs to be a facility.
Lindsay Boyer, Open Space Manager. Yeah, that's an excellent point. We recognize that the whole west side of town is sort of void in terms of having formal trailheads that have restroom facilities. The Kings Canyon Trailhead will have a restroom facility that's added. I know you just noted that a lot of people don't start from that location. We would really like to have a trailhead facility in Ash Canyon at some point. That could be a future FLAP grant opportunity, which we've used. That's what's funding the Kings Canyon Trailhead project right now. So it is on our radar, and it is something that needs to be addressed. So, yeah.
Anything else? Okay. Public comment. The public is invited at this time to comment on any matter that is not specifically included on the agenda as an action item. No action may be taken. Yes.
You
skipped number 14.
I did? Oh, future agenda items. I'm sorry. Do we have any future agenda items?
So after reading over the question 18 ballot last month, because we were in the month of the 25 reunion, a couple things jumped out at me. And one of those things was the beautification of the entryways into the Carson City. And I would love to talk about the north end of town and the landscape barriers coming in at the north end of town. The landscape medians, I apologize, the medians there, and see if we can start something up to get those beautified. How would we proceed?
Do you want a separate item regarding that, or do you want to talk about it as part of the development of the budget for next year?
I think that the development of the budget would be high on the priority list to do that, because that's probably time sensitive. So even I would leave that up to you, Jennifer, and your expertise on this. I know that it might be a long haul, but I definitely feel that those need to be beautified.
I think, I 100% agree with you. I think it'd probably be best at the February meeting when we talk about capital improvements and developing the capital budget, and that includes the quality of life budget.
So prior to that, can we have any idea of what the first step would and what kind of funding would take? Is that a landscape architect? Is that a...
I think we'd want to look at what that scope of work might be, and do we want to hire, we'd probably have to include Public Works in the conversation. because it is a right-of-way. Obviously, we don't want line-of-sight issues. We don't want to create
Of
something that
course.
would be an issue. It'd probably be hiring a third-party consultant to redesign that corridor. I think it would be great. I did mention your comments to the new Arts and Culture Coordinator at the Culture and Tourism Authority, because I think a piece of public art might be a great first impression when you come into the city, and you could utilize one of those medians as a location.
And that's a great idea. So-
But,
Well,
but I don't
I'm
know
all
what that
in.
looks like. I'm not that creative person, but I think hiring a third-party consultant, maybe including that in the budget, and then we figure out, what is their vision gonna cost, and then the following budget, we would include the
All
construction
right,
piece.
so that would be included in the February meeting and also prior to the because sometimes your guys' budget process starts before we get to see the budget, so.
Yeah, February and April would be those two key points as far as like the park commission goes. And I think on a side note, I can work with Public Works to see what they would envision, and that would work with them being in the middle of the right of way.
Well, any help you need from me.
Okay.
I
might
would
suck you
love-
into a little sidebar meeting.
I would love to do that. I would love to do that, and I would
Okay.
love to see that happen for Carson City. So many
Okay.
people come into our town in that direction, and it's definitely lacking up there, so,
Thank you.
thank you.
Anything else? No? Okay, now on to public comment. The public is invited at this time to comment on any matter that is not specifically included on the agenda as an action item. No action may be taken on a matter raised under this item of the agenda. Is there any public out there?
Is there anyone on the line for public comment?
There are no callers on the line at this time.
She does.
For public action to adjourn, do we need a motion for that? No. So, we are adjourned. We didn't do too bad.